Patrol snacks with a side of porn, a new Lyft feature that allows you to gender profile your driver, and a former Biden official caught red-handed with stolen ladies' clothes in his closet. It's time to crown my losers of the week. Hang on to your hats. The show starts now. It's been another big week for losers, so let's get started. First on my list tonight, a supermarket chain across the pond in the UK has issued a recall of Paw Patrol branded snacks after discovering the little snack-sized pouches of biscuits and bars included a new kind of special prize on the packaging, a porn site. Apparently, if you type in the URL listed on the back of the packaging, it will redirect you to a white screen with Chinese writing, but if you access the site from a mobile device, it loads porn pop-up ads. Now, this special surprise is so far limited to just this UK-based grocery store chain, and don't bother trying to find these snacks stateside, as I'm sure Hunter Biden has cleared the shelves. A little side note here, when I Googled this story for more information, I made the grave mistake of typing in Paw Patrol porn, and much to my dismay, Pornhub, along with several other porn sites, have a category specifically for Paw Patrol porn. Apparently, that is a thing. But I'm glad to hear Paw Patrol is making such a strong comeback, though. They did try to cancel the show and the franchise in 2020 for shining too positive a light on police. I'm going to take a wild guess and assume the left is still more distraught over that than the porn website on kitty snacks. But again, just a wild guess. Moving on to loser 2 this week, the rideshare app Lyft. Unfortunately, you can no longer order a ride from a complete stranger without being inundated with the LGBTQ alphabet of horrors. Yes, the rideshare app Lyft is unveiling a new feature in select cities that lets women and non-binary drivers prioritize passengers who fit the same description. Lyft calls it Women Plus Connect, and they say it's designed to make women and non-binary people feel safer and more comfortable, but I call BS. If drivers and riders can identify as whatever the heck they want, how is that supposed to make actual women feel safer if they select a female driver or rider who is actually a male but masquerades as a female? And what's next? Will Lyft allow riders to pick the race of their driver? This doesn't do anything to improve safety and is just another stupid corporate virtue signal designed to score diversity, equity, and inclusion points. I don't care if it's a she, he, or a they, them who picks me up. I ask that they not smell of BO and weed, but obviously that's too much to ask. But speaking of non-binary, my final loser this week is a repeat offender, not only on this particular list, but also for stealing ladies' suitcases from airport luggage carousels. Yes, Sam Brinton, another fantastic Biden hire who once led Biden's nuclear waste policy at the DOE, had his closet raided by police. And what did they find? Well, clothing belonging to the Tanzanian fashion designer that claimed Brinton stole her suitcase and then wore her fashions. Brinton has also been charged with swiping a suitcase full of clothing, jewelry, and makeup from the Las Vegas airport. Joe sure knows who to put in charge, let me tell you what. But still, even Brinton, the luggage thief, isn't as bad as you know who. But those are my losers of the week. But the fun, and when I say fun, I mean national embarrassments, don't end there, folks. Joining me now to help break down some more of the week's low points is NewsBusters podcast host and executive editor, Tim Graham. Tim, it's only Thursday, but it's already been quite the week. I have a number of things I want to get to, but I have to start with a topic that's probably most important to me and should be to most Americans, and that is the invasion at our southern border. So there's a couple things I want to address here, but first, last night I was distraught, and I mean distraught, to hear that DHS is extending the temporary protected status for 18 months to Venezuelans in the United States. Boy, I wonder how quickly they're going to get them voting. Tim, what do you think?
You know, the networks are now calling it a crisis. Well, if it's a crisis, why is everything we're seeing out of the Biden administration is let's cut all the wires and make sure they get in here? They're creating a crisis, and obviously they're creating a crisis on purpose. And so it's really kind of, we've noticed this for years. They only cover this for just small periods of time. But what we've seen is just, yes, a dramatic surge in immigration. And you can't say it's an accident. You have to say this is a policy. And yes, it's all right to be cynical and say, what is the end goal of your policy? Oh, well, they can't vote right now. All right. But the Clinton-Gore administration also was very aggressive about getting, the immigrants in. They all seem to believe in this notion that, we're just going to cause the browning of America and scare all the white Americans, that, the Democrats are going to take over forever.
See, the thing about this that really bothers me is that, the Democrats, I got to hand it to them because they are so smart. They are so strategic. They play the long game on everything. I felt like this was going to happen, and I could see the writing on the wall. It was going to be, we have a worker shortage in the U.S., and then we've got thousands and thousands of people, millions really, invading our southern border. And, we don't just want them sitting around in New York City, so we should allow them to work, and that would be great. And then once they start working, it's going to be, they're paying taxes and they have anchor babies, so amnesty. We got to give them amnesty. And now that they've got amnesty and they're working and they have anchor babies, we've got to let them vote because that's the Democratic thing to do. They're smart. I got to hand it to them. They knew exactly what they were doing. They're like, you know what? Screw the American people. It doesn't really matter what they think of our policies. We'll get millions and millions of people in here that owe a debt of gratitude to the Democrat Party and will vote for us. And they don't really care how bad it looks because their end goal is going to eventually trump our end goal because they thought about this 10 years ago. I just don't know how we play catch up.
Well, I mean, it is fun. I do appreciate the idea that red state Republican governors have been, busing migrants out into blue states, places that call themselves sanctuary cities, just to watch them all complain now that you see the governor of New York suddenly saying, don't come to America, don't come to New York City. Yes, that's probably a temporary position because, yes, voters are angry. And what's interesting about this is voters of all colors are angry. Now, this is a problem for Democrats in a city like New York City or a state like New York. One of the problems we have here in the long game is that you have a news media that always come at the immigration issue from the perspective of the illegal immigrant. So there's no focus on what illegal immigration costs us in our schools, in our hospitals, in our courtrooms and jails, in our welfare systems. They're not interested in that at all. And if an immigrant commits a crime, that's not news. That's some sort of Republican talking point. And so when you have that kind of coverage, which is always Miguel wants to come out of the shadows, I mean, it really does bolster that whole Democrat narrative that somehow it's the Republicans who are against, the phrases or the poems at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the thing that annoys me the most of anything is when a liberal will quote the poem on the Statue of Liberty as if it's a founding document. You know what? If that thing is going to now somehow have some jurisdiction or some authority, they can have it back. France can have it back. You can take it. And plus the 20 million illegal immigrants that came with it. You can take it, all right? So we don't need it. The little poem, it's nice and everything, but not that important to us. The invasion is much more important. But I want to talk to you about, another thing that really hasn't been reported anywhere outside of maybe the Daily Wire that went down to cover it, but it's this colony outside of Houston. So now, when I first saw this, and we have footage of it, because if you didn't see it, you won't believe it, but we have footage of this colony that's supposedly supposed to be kind of this mega illegal immigrant colony that's being set up, and you don't need a social security number, and all the illegals can live there. Have you seen that footage? I mean, it just seems like it's got to be fake, but it's not.
Yeah, it is strange to look at, and you can certainly ask yourself the question: what is going on outside of Houston? And I know some of the members of Congress in there have gotten pretty vocal about what's going on there. I guess they call it Colony Ridge is a development they're trying to create, and I think the nefarious sounding thing is where they're all like, well, we'll set you up with mortgage loans where you don't need a social security number. And so, yeah, it sounds like you're creating these massive suburbs that are just full of illegal immigrants. You would say, well, this looks like a plot, to please Breitbart. But I think this is a story that needs some developing. And obviously, Texas is always going to get the brunt of all of this. And so the congressmen and the governors there should be looking into this very seriously.
Yeah, it feels like not only a colony, it's called Colony Ridge, but it feels like an annexation of the United States. I mean, think about it. What else would it be? You've got illegal immigrants by the thousands, by the millions now accumulated in the United States, a lot of them in Texas. Of course, they have spread out, but now they're creating areas for them to live where it's essentially lawless, because if you're already an illegal immigrant, it is lawless. So to me, you're annexing the United States, a sovereign nation, for people who don't belong here, who are not legally allowed to be here. I have a real problem with that. That's why, when Democrats say, what should we do? We can't just build the wall. I agree. We can't just build the wall. We have to build the wall, and we have to have mass deportations. They go hand in hand, and then close the border. So that's my solution. I do want to move on to some other news of the week that's been really interesting. Going back, speaking of invasions that we're spending money on, and that's Ukraine once again. So another thing that I thought had to be a parody or a spoof, this American transgender who served as the spokesperson for the Ukrainian military now has been suspended, but had a very odd presence. I want to play a clip because it's, again, too good to be true.
Russia hates the truth that their obsessive focus on a Ukrainian volunteer is simply allowing the light of the Ukrainian nation's honesty to shine brightly. Next week, the teeth of the Russian devils will gnash ever harder, and their rabid mouths will foam in uncontrollable frenzy as the world will see a favorite Kremlin propagandist pay for their crimes. And this puppet of Putin is only the first. Russia's war criminal propagandists will all be hunted down, and justice will be served as we in Ukraine are led on this mission by faith in God, liberty, and complete liberation.
Tim, what the hell did I just watch? This wasn't a skit on SNL. It would be far funnier than any SNL skits as of late. But that's a real thing. Now, this person has been suspended, threatened a senator, obviously threatening to hunt down people that are critical of Ukraine. But I just don't know how we get here. I guess it's Ukraine's problem. We sent that over there, though. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it was clearly unauthorized messaging. But you have to wonder who'd authorize this messenger in the first place. Is this designed for liberal Twitter in America? I don't understand why on earth this really badly attempting to pass for a female guy, gets to speak for the Ukrainian Russian resistance. But, obviously, I think we all understand if you put some of these words in the mouth of a Republican in the 1980s about, hunting down the Russian dogs, all the liberals would have fainted.
Right. It's really something. Again, I just don't know where we go from here. It's bad enough when you have this kind of marketing for a beer company such as Bud Light. It's a whole other thing when you have it representing your military. And again, I say not one more cent to Ukraine. Not one more. Not a half a cent. Not a millicent. Not any cent. Nothing. Not even a free gift basket to Ukraine is my stance. I want to move on to another thing, though. Speaking of, things that don't make sense, we've got a couple of pro-life grandmothers, right? Apparently, they are being hit with the book. The letter of the law has fallen down upon their elderly shoulders. And again, for blocking access to an abortion clinic, that is against the law. But my goodness, how can the average American look at this and look at these old women and say, yeah, those are the criminals we should go after? Not the smash and grabs, not the rioters, not the looters, not the Biden family, the grannies. They will destroy democracy. What is going on here, Tim?
Well, you have a U.S. attorney for D.C. in Matthew Graves, who's, he was appointed by that devout Catholic president, Joe Biden. Yeah. And they're going to enforce anybody who's keeping a woman from an abortion is apparently the worst kind of criminal. I went looking to say, let's see how many people they're going to put behind bars for in D.C. for the ones that vandalize the art galleries in D.C. or who regularly block traffic on Interstate 395. Those people are on the highway are obstructing access. Those people are just trying to get home. They're not trying to kill somebody. So it is kind of sad that that's where we are. And yes, we should say when we look at U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves, he has a 67% rate of declining to prosecute people arrested for crimes. He's got a really bad record at that. So the idea that he's going to select this shows you he has very Democrat Party priorities.
Well, no duh. I mean, I think we could see that from a mile away. But, at some point, you would think that they would try to maybe even thinly veil their attempts to destroy this nation, really. Just put a thin veil on it. But now they're just kind of right out with it. Like, you know what? We just want to destroy this country. We're showing you who the enemies are, old ladies. We're allowing millions of people across the border. We're sending all our money to Ukraine and $700 to Maui wildfire victims. We don't even care about the people in East Palestine, Ohio. I mean, at least I guess they're being more forthright with their goals and their mission. I want to turn now to last week, and really spilling into last weekend was a really rough weekend for Donald Trump because of that Megyn Kelly interview. I'm sure that you saw it. There's a lot of conservatives that are rightfully so pretty angry about a few of the things that he said. He didn't come right out and say that a man can't be a woman. He didn't immediately come out and say that he messed up on COVID. In fact, he said he did a great job with COVID. He said he didn't know who gave Fauci the letter of condemnation, even though it was him. So there was some things, calling the heartbeat bill, terrible. A lot of things, right? But of course, he is lashing out not at his advisors, not as those who are maybe prepping him for these interviews, but he's lashing out at Megyn Kelly, calling her nasty. This really brings back feelings from, 2015 in that first debate. But I want to take a look at the clip, and I want to get your thought if this was a misstep by Trump or not. Let's take a look.
I sat down for an hour, and then I did a Megyn Kelly one, and she had, she became nastier all of a sudden. She was pretty nasty, didn't you think? Anybody that watched it?
All right. So agree or disagree with his assessment? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong, or is it a draw?
Well, he has this tendency of always saying that, especially women, when they ask him tough questions. He did it to Caitlin Collins on CNN during the town hall, is he'll say, "Oh, you're nasty." And then the liberal women all go out and get T-shirts with the word nasty on them. I think Megyn Kelly's questions were fair questions. And yeah, I agree with a lot of people that it shouldn't be hard to say men are men and women are women. How hard is that? And I do agree also that it's a heartbeat bill is not a terrible thing. I do want to give Trump credit that he went out and did an interview with Megyn Kelly. He knows that she's not going to just ask him all the softball questions. Trump is doing that. Trump went on CNN and they all hated it. Trump went on Meet the Press and the liberals all melted down. So the focus on some level is clearly, if you want to say, like Joe Scarborough's trying to say, that Trump has dementia, he's going out there and taking these things on. Joe Biden, where's his interview?
Right.
Where's his Meet the Press interview? Where's his Megyn Kelly interview? Can you imagine Biden and Megyn Kelly? There's no way on earth they would do that. They're scared of giving him like softball interviews on PBS.
Right.
Yeah, Drew Barrymore, that's about on his level.
Yeah. Oh, you're not wrong. Unfortunately, Drew Barrymore is having her own issues right now because she wanted to move forward with her show, and then she realized that she had to placate to the strike, and so then she apologized, and it really is the snake eating its own tail here. But we've got a debate coming up next week. To my knowledge, Trump is still not showing up. I thought it was a mistake not to show up to the last one. I think it's an even bigger mistake not to show up to this one. He feels like he doesn't need it. But I think that he actually might, especially after a couple of things that he said that have kind of pissed off a lot of conservatives. I'm thinking that he needs to start showing up, if for no other reason than to put Joe Biden in the hot seat to have to show up. What do you think? Should he go next week?
Yeah, I would say that you should. Anybody who's running for president should have the audacity to show up for the scheduled debates. I think this is one of the reasons why Trump is granting interviews to Megyn Kelly or Kristen Welker, so he can say, well, it's not like I'm not taking tough questions or showing up in challenging environments. But yeah, obviously, he's looking at this and going, I'm up by 45. I don't have to. And I'm sure Biden can do the same thing. I don't really have challengers. And I imagine Biden's refusal to debate is one of those things that enables Trump to say, I shouldn't have to debate either. My challengers aren't any more serious than Biden's challengers.
Yeah, except for that's not the case. And I think there's a big difference between taking tough questions from CNN or Megyn Kelly and standing there next to your competitors and drawing a comparison and a contrast between yourself, your policies, and theirs. I think he doesn't want to have to answer for some of those things. And I specifically, and I said this last time, I don't think he wants to face Ron DeSantis. And I don't think, especially now, he wants to face Ron DeSantis in front of Republican voters and have to own up to COVID. And then now him saying that a heartbeat bill is a terrible idea. Now, if he would have said, listen, if we run on a 6-week abortion ban, we're going to lose a general election. That's not where most Americans are. I actually would agree with him on that stance. But that's not what he said. So I also think it's interesting. I think you remember when Ron DeSantis made that comment about listless vessels. He wasn't actually talking about Trump supporters, but it got taken out of context. And that was the biggest thing. Ron DeSantis calls Donald Trump supporters listless vessels. I think that Donald Trump actually saying that the heartbeat bill was a terrible idea probably is worse than saying the listless vessels comment, but he didn't get the same level of scrutiny. So very interesting how this is all playing out between the two of them.
Yeah, and I think obviously he knows if he shows up to a debate, he's not just debating DeSantis or getting tough remarks from DeSantis. He's getting them from Haley, Pence, Scott, Chris Christie. I mean, everybody there is going to have harsh things to say about Trump, and it'll seem to have more power because he has to stand there and take it. That's what he doesn't want to do. Somehow he thinks it's not manly for him to have to, get a beating from all of these nobodies. That's, I'm sure, where he's coming from. What's interesting about these Trumpless debates is that at least people could sit here and look at who else is there and what their ideas are. I think that when Trump shows up to a debate, policy is usually not the first thing on the table. It usually becomes he makes fun of somebody for being fat or nasty, and then we go off in that direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that at some point, Republican voters are going to need to see the lineup that they have to choose from. And I think Trump needs to show up for that. I think he owes it to his supporters and he owes it to the American people. So I hope that at some point, I hope that he feels it necessary to show up, because I want to see that exchange and I want to see him take the tough questions, specifically about his handling of COVID. But I appreciate you going through all these topics with me. I think we covered it all, from the Ukrainian trans military spokesperson all the way to Donald Trump calling Megyn Kelly nasty. We hit it all, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, God bless. I'll talk to you soon. But still ahead, Dave Portnoy catches the fake news media red-handed and out loud. R.I.P. Washington Post, you got bodied. And I have some final thoughts. The fake news mainstream media in all forms, facets, platforms, and places does not operate on a journalism code of ethics. They operate and live to sustain their preferred narrative like the bottom feeders they are. Those of us who have been doing this conservative media thing for a while know this song and dance, and we know it very well. So-called journalists decide to target someone they don't particularly like or a thought they don't particularly agree with, and then from there, they do everything in their power and under the guise of neutrality to make that personal bias come true. But Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy turned the tables on one of those outlets and one of those bottom feeders this week after he got wind that the Washington Post was working on a hit piece on him and his forthcoming Pizza Fest, and it really is just chef's kiss. Watch.
We are planning to write about the festival and how some of the sponsors and participants have drawn criticism by seemingly to associate themselves with Dave Portnoy, who has a history of misogynic comments and other problematic behavior. I want to make sure that Blank had a chance to respond to this, since the company is the most prominent and their partners of his festival.
Oh, that's the one I sent to, which was definitely the most pointed of them, because I really did want them to respond, and I was hoping to get something from them.
Do you think that's fair? Like, I totally disagree with the assertions of what you said, that misogynic and all that stuff. So that is pretty pointed. You said you didn't do it. Then I have the exact evidence of you doing it. So
no, I didn't say I didn't do that. I said I did. That was the one that was the most
Well, no, that one before I provided proof, you said you didn't really remember doing that, and then I read it to you, and you're like, oh yeah, I did it that one time. So you did do it.
So to summarize just the snippet of that masterpiece that I just played for you, Washington Post reporter Emily Hale was on a journalistic tear with one apparent goal in mind: to shame Dave Portnoy's Pizza Fest sponsors and advertisers. As uncovered by Dave himself in this very pointed email, Emily reached out to sponsors and she did just that. She insinuated, without first speaking with Dave at all, that he is a misogynist and problematic, and inquired whether said sponsor was okay with being associated with that. She not only led the witness, so to speak, but she actually did what amounts to treacherous interference, as Dave put it. But when he called her out for it, she couldn't own up to it. At first, she played dumb, and then she just played like the snake she clearly is. She wasn't trying to get a fuller picture, because if she was, she would have spoken to Dave first, being that he is the subject of the article. But she didn't do that because she already had her mind made up before she penned or typed a word of this would-be hit piece. Journalism, as we once knew it, is dead. This isn't your grandfather's Woodward and Bernstein era Washington Post. These are activists with MacBooks, and it couldn't be more obvious. But Dave was smart and savvy enough to not only play their game, but body them in the process. And this Emily gal deserves the inevitable and lasting internet and social media embarrassment that will forever be associated with her byline: play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Those are my final thoughts. Be sure to watch us on YouTube, OutKick, subscribe, and we'll see you next time from Nashville. God bless and take care.